Quick question. Do you understand English, but when it's time to speak, your mind goes completely blank? You know the words, you know the grammar, but your mouth just doesn't cooperate? If that sounds familiar, stay with me, because today I'm going to show you one simple habit that can completely change the way you speak English. Welcome back to English for Real People. My name is Sarah, and today we're not talking about grammar or rules. We're talking about how to actually speak English without freezing. I'm not going to make you wait 10 minutes for the main idea. I'll give it to you now, and then I'll show you how to use it correctly. Because yes, there is a big mistake most students make with this habit. They think they're practicing, but they're actually wasting time. And in a moment, I'll tell you exactly how to avoid that mistake. Here it is. Daily self-conversation in English. Yes, you talk to yourself in English every day. Just a few minutes. No teacher, no speaking partner, no pressure. Sounds simple, right? It is simple. But simple does not mean easy if you do it the wrong way. Before I explain how to do this habit correctly, I want to explain why I needed it so badly, because I tried everything else first. I studied English for many years. Classes, grammar, vocabulary. On paper, my English was good, but speaking was always the real problem. So I made a big decision. I moved to Europe, to a city where English was everywhere. I honestly thought, if I live in English, I'll finally speak English. And yes, some things improved. I understood conversations, I got the jokes, my listening was fine. But speaking was still hard. I remember standing in front of native speakers, understanding everything they said, and then it was my turn to talk, and nothing came out. I knew the words, I knew the grammar, but my mouth just didn't cooperate. Let me say this clearly. Living in London didn't fix my English. The problem wasn't the language. The problem was fear. Every time I wanted to speak, my brain started overthinking. What if I say it wrong? What if my accent sounds weird? What if they judge me? So many times I stayed quiet. Not because I couldn't speak, but because I was afraid to speak. And honestly, that silence was worse than making mistakes. That's when I finally understood something important. Fluency is not about where you live. It's about how often you let yourself speak, even when it feels uncomfortable. And that's exactly why this habit works. Now, let me tell you where most learners fail, because this is extremely common. They hear self-conversation and immediately think it means saying random sentences, like I'm walking or I'm eating, and then stopping. And honestly, if that worked, everyone would be fluent already. That's not practice. That's just naming actions, like talking to yourself as if you were a robot. If you do that for weeks or even months, you'll still freeze when someone talks to you in real life. Why? Because your brain is not learning how to think. It's only learning how to label things. And real conversations don't work like that. Nobody talks by naming actions. People think, react, explain, complain, decide, and change their mind while speaking. That's what your brain needs to practice. But when learners only say short, disconnected sentences, the brain never switches into conversation mode. It stays in English exercise mode. And that's dangerous, because you feel like you're practicing, but you're not building fluency. You're just repeating sounds. Then one day you're talking to a real person. They ask you a simple question, and suddenly your mind goes blank. Not because you don't know English, but because your brain was never trained to think in English under movement. Fluency is movement. It's messy. It's imperfect. And that's exactly why this mistake keeps so many people stuck for years without understanding what's wrong. Now, let me show you the right way to do self-conversation, because this is where everything changes. Self-conversation does not mean talking like a robot and naming what you see around you. It means thinking out loud in English, the same way you already think in your own language. And this is important, because in real life, nobody speaks in perfect sentences. People think while they talk. They change ideas, they explain, they react.
That's exactly what you need to practice. For example, instead of saying, I'm making coffee, you say, I'm making coffee because I feel tired today, I went to bed late again, and I really need to change that habit. See what's happening there? You're not memorizing anything. You're not forcing grammar. You're just expressing a real thought. And that's the key. When you do this, your brain stops treating English like a school subject and starts treating it like a real language. You're training your brain to move from one idea to another without stopping. And yes, at the beginning, it feels messy. You hesitate, you repeat yourself, you make mistakes. That's normal. That's exactly what should happen. Fluency is not clean. Fluency is movement. The more you allow yourself to think out loud, the faster your brain connects ideas in English. And over time, something very important happens. You stop translating. You don't think first in your language and then in English. You just think and speak. That's why this method works when apps and grammar books fail. Because you're not learning English, you're using English. And that makes all the difference.
Now that you understand how to do self-conversation the right way, let's talk about why this habit actually works so well. Because this is where a lot of people finally go, oh, that makes sense. First, it works because you speak every single day. And fluency only comes from speaking, not from watching videos or reading rules. You can understand English perfectly and still not be fluent, because fluency lives in your mouth, not in your head. Second, this habit works because there is zero pressure. No one is listening, no one is judging, no one is correcting you. And that's huge, because fear is the biggest fluency killer. When fear disappears, your brain relaxes. And when your brain relaxes, words come out more easily. Third, your brain slowly stops translating. At the beginning, you might still think in your language and then switch to English, but over time, that gap gets smaller and smaller until your thoughts just come out in English automatically. That's when speaking feels fast and natural. Fourth, your vocabulary becomes active. You stop saying, I know this word, and you start saying, I use this word. That's a massive difference. Words move from memory into action. And fifth, this habit works because you can do it anywhere. Walking, cooking, cleaning, driving, even waiting in line. There's no excuse. And when something is easy to repeat, consistency becomes natural. And consistency is what builds fluency. So now that you know why this habit works, the real question is how to use it, step by step without overthinking it. And that's where the 3 levels come in. Now, let's talk about how to actually use this habit in a simple and clear way. Because knowing the idea is not enough. You need a structure. This habit has 3 levels, and each level trains your brain in a different way. So don't skip them. Level 1 is daily narration with thought. This is where everything starts. You describe what you're doing and you add one simple thought. For example, you don't just say, I'm getting ready for work. You say, I'm getting ready for work because I feel tired today and I stayed up too late again. That's it. Nothing fancy. This level is about connecting actions with thoughts. And when you do this every day, your brain starts learning how to speak while thinking at the same time, which is a key skill for fluency. After level 1 starts to feel easy and natural, you move to level 2. This is simulated conversations, and this is where your English starts to feel much more real. You create conversations and you play both roles. At a restaurant, at work, on the phone, anywhere. You ask a question, you answer it, you react, you continue. For example, can I see the menu? Sure. What do you recommend? The chicken is popular. Great, I'll try that. You might feel silly at first, and that's normal. But what you're really doing is training your brain to handle real conversation flow. You're learning how questions and answers connect, and that's something books can't teach you. Then comes level 3, and this is the most powerful level of all, thinking out loud. Here, you choose one topic and you talk for 5 minutes without stopping. No script, no correcting, just talking.
For example, you might talk about social media, work, your day, or something that annoyed you. You explain, you complain, you change ideas, you repeat yourself, and that's perfect because that's exactly how real people speak. This level teaches your brain to organize ideas in English in real time. And when you can do that, speaking with other people becomes much easier and much more natural.
Before we continue, I want you to do something right now because this is the difference between people who actually improve and people who just watch videos. Don't worry, it's simple. I want you to practice level 1 right now. Yes, right now. Don't say I'll do it later because later never comes. Write one single sentence in the comments. Just one. Tell me what you're doing at this moment and add one thought about why you're doing it. For example, I'm watching this video because I really want to speak English with confidence. That's it. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need fancy words. This is practice, not an exam. And here's the important part. When you write that sentence, your brain switches from passive mode to active mode. You stop being a viewer and you become a learner. I read the comments. And yes, I correct some of them because mistakes are not the problem. Silence is the problem. And when you see other people commenting, you'll realize you're not alone. Everyone is learning. Everyone is practicing. That's how confidence grows. So take 10 seconds, write your sentence, and then come back. Because now you're not just listening anymore. You're actually doing the work.
Now, there is one very important rule you need to understand. Because if you ignore this rule, everything we talked about before loses power. And this rule is simple. Do not stop to correct yourself while you are speaking. Ever. This is where many learners sabotage their own progress. They start speaking, they make a small mistake, and immediately they stop, correct it, repeat the sentence, and break the flow. And they think they are being responsible learners, but they are actually training their brain to panic. Every time you stop, your brain hears a signal. Something is wrong. And when your brain feels something is wrong, fear comes back. And when fear comes back, fluency disappears. Real conversations don't stop every 2 seconds. People make mistakes, they change sentences halfway, they correct themselves later, and they keep going. That's how speaking works in real life. So when you practice self-conversation, your goal is not accuracy. Your goal is flow. If you forget a word, describe it. If you say something wrong, keep going. Nobody is grading you. Nobody is listening. This is your safe space. And the more you allow yourself to continue speaking without interruption, the faster your brain learns that English is not dangerous. Over time, your confidence grows, your speed increases, and speaking starts to feel normal. That's why this rule matters so much. Fluency comes from flow, not from perfection.
Now, let's put all of this into a simple action plan because ideas don't change your English. Actions do. And don't worry, this is very simple. First, choose a fixed time every day. It doesn't have to be long. 10 minutes is enough. What matters is consistency, not duration. 5 minutes every day is better than 1 hour once a week. Week 1, focus only on level 1, daily narration with thought. Talk about what you're doing and add one simple idea. Don't rush it. Let your brain get used to speaking. Week 2, move to level 2, simulated conversations. Create small dialogues. Ask questions, answer them, react, continue. This is where your confidence starts to grow. Week 3, add level 3, thinking out loud. Choose one topic and talk for 5 minutes without stopping. No script, no corrections, just keep going. And now, listen to this part carefully because it's important. When I say record yourself, I don't want you to record yourself to find mistakes. That's not the goal. Record yourself today, then record yourself again in 30 days. Don't compare grammar, compare confidence. The difference will surprise you. That moment when you hear yourself speaking more calmly and more freely, that's when you'll know something changed.
That's when you'll realize you're becoming fluent. So, before we finish, I want you to remember one simple thing. Fluency does not come from watching videos. It doesn't come from knowing grammar rules. And it definitely doesn't come from waiting until you feel ready. Fluency comes from speaking, from using English, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels messy, especially when it feels messy, because that's how real language works. If you only listen and watch, nothing changes. But if you speak, even 5 minutes a day, something starts to shift. Slowly at first, and then faster than you expect. Confidence grows, fear gets quieter, and English starts to feel normal instead of stressful. And listen, you don't need perfect English to start speaking. You need speaking to build confident English. That's the order. So make a promise to yourself today. Speak even when you make mistakes. Speak even when you don't like how you sound. Speak anyway. Because every time you do, your brain learns that English is safe. And that's how fluency is built. Thank you for being here. Thank you for practicing. And if this episode helped you, like the video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs it. And remember, keep speaking, keep practicing, and keep moving forward. You've got this.